if you're in their position, you give them your worst possible contract. And if you don't negotiate it, you're signing their worst possible contract. They have lawyers internally. They have backup clauses for everything. If you don't even try to negotiate, you're signing their worst contract, which ultimately means if everything goes absolutely perfectly, right, which we all know in construction, of course, it goes perfectly, right? If everything goes absolutely perfectly, you'd be fine. If you don't, you're going to come out behind.
Hi, everybody. Gavin Coyle. I'm the Gaffer, back again with an amazing guest all the way from Australia, but with an Irish connection. It's Cian Brennan, and he's the chairman of Quantum Contract Solutions. So what they do is basically the due diligence on the tender packs that you guys receive and that you guys fill out for a project. So, for example, if you wanted to save between 5 and 15% on a contract and make money from the contract, these guys have the smarts to show you how to do that. And I'm really excited to get under the bonnet and find out how in the hell can you save 5 to 15% on these tender packs, considering there's so much time and effort gone in from everybody to try and look after their own position. So, Cian, you've got a challenge on your hands to explain this to us, but we're delighted to have you on the podcast, and welcome. And let's give us a bit of an introduction on who you are and where you are today.
Thanks for the intro. So I'm Cian. I'm the chairman of Quantum. So I'm based in Australia, but we're all over the world. Got people in South Africa, US, Canada, Ireland, Australia. So what we do essentially is we help subcontractors and suppliers to negotiate better contracts and then manage those contracts to have better margins, better cash flow and risk. So my background is I've, for all my career, almost 20 years, I worked on the dark side, let's say, Gavin. So I worked for the clients, and I worked for all of 10 of the top 30 construction companies in the world, consulted for or worked for directly. And working in it, I was essentially designing the contractual strategies on their side. And it was never anything that was vindictive. It was always just protecting the big company, right? How do we protect ourselves from risk? Yeah. How do we push the risk down the way onto contractor, subcontractor, depending on what it is? How do we take it off ourselves? And how do we ensure that we're going to make money on this project? Because for the bigger construction companies, there's a big loan in place to finance their project. They're getting played by the top dog, whoever that is, the government, oil and gas company or energy company or developer. Yeah. And they make their money on the difference. So the more that they can push the risk down, save costs down the way, and deliver on the project, the more money they're going to make. So that's the game that they play. And for years and years, I kind of got to the point where I felt that I wasn't really enjoying it anymore. I was seeing subcontractors not get paid what I would deem to be unfairly, bullied a lot, go out of business many, many times. And it just didn't really sit right with me. And then also I was working away quite a lot. So on a lot of these mega projects, they're not home, so you'd have to fly to them. And I remember I got a message from my father, and it was a picture of my grandfather's business card from 1947. This real old raggedy business card. It was very cool. And he was in Galway, and he had a construction company in Galway. And he built some big things, actually. He built the Bish, which is a famous school in Galway. And I remember thinking, I don't think he'd be happy with me, what I'm doing in the role I'm doing it. And so that kind of, sprung me to action a bit. And I got me thinking that if I could flip this around, because I know how the big companies work contractually, if I can set up a company that was flips it around, helps these big subcontractors still and suppliers manage it from the other way. I could save them or help them make a lot of money. And that 5 to 15% is the stat that's thrown around a lot, is how much is won or lost in contract management. So if you're not playing the game at all, you're essentially losing the whole 15%. If you're playing the game, there's a battle between who takes the 5 and the 15% purely on the contract negotiations, change orders, variations, extension of times. There's that much money in it. I can come back to that in a second.
Yeah, I think that's the real hook for me as well. You're the first one that I've met in this space, if you don't mind me saying, Cian, who's actually put the figure together and said it's between 5 and 15%. That's the sort of the model. So I know we'll get to that later on. But as you're talking there, I'm really thinking of Gordon Gekko and that time that Charlie Sheen had to walk into the room and say, like, what the hell are you doing selling blue fly or whatever the business was, his dad's business? Because it's that moment, isn't it, where you just go, the morality of what you were doing kind of just dropped and said, like, okay, was that a moment in time? Was there family stuff going on as well that kind of led to that? Like, was there a personal issue outside of your grandfather? Like,
I think that's a good point, actually, because it was pretty on the nose when I had when my wife was pregnant with our first kid. And then I think the element of family came into it, because a lot of these companies are family-run companies. They're not these big, massive organizations. They're guys that are putting everything on the line day in, day out. You know, sometimes if you sign the wrong contract, you've put your house on the line. And so that was
blue-collar workers. Yeah.
So many of these companies, like a scaffolding company, civil company, most of the owners of these companies, now they're big companies. We're talking about 20, 30, 40 million companies, right? But they still started off with a guy who was started off as has started his own one-man band, worked really, really hard, and then grew it. So
they never thought that they were going to get to the size that they were or they are at this stage. It just took off with them, and it became, because they were so good at their own trade, they got dragged into this business world, and then there's vultures circling in this world.
It's very true. So, I mean, you know, it is a perspective thing, because inside those companies, it was like, you know, we're doing the best for the company, and the perspective was, you know, we don't get ripped off by the subcontractor. But the PwCs, Deloitte's, Ernst & Young's of the world came in, and they're like, you know, you need to make these contracts push the risk down. If you do that, you're going to make more money. And they all did it.
Okay. So we're basically saying that there is a master blueprint model out there to take 15% plus your gross margin and net margin that you would expect to get anyway. So there's 5 to 15% that can be played with.
Like 100%. I'll give you a story about an Irish company in a second. But so what happened there after that moment in time, I was like, I want to start this business, and I was going to do a consultancy and then help them that way. Unfortunately, a lot of subcontractors can't afford day rates and hourly rates, and I came across this guy called Alan Dibb, who had just sold a big company. He's a big online guy now, but he helped me go, well, why don't you disrupt the industry? Instead of doing the day rate model, do a retainer model, which was completely different. Like, there was no Zoom calls back in the day. It was like, okay, we're going to come in and we'll do everything via this system. You just send them in, we jump onto a Zoom call, and it was quite risky. And he showed me how to do everything, and then we're able to basically fractionalize the service, so we could help subcontractors at a reasonable cost that they could afford for all of their projects, but then they wouldn't be forking out the day rates that, you know, a traditional consultant would need.
This is amazing. This is exactly what we want to be talking about on this show, because I'm just thinking that 15% is probably 35%, 40% profit. If and we had this discussion offline, but if someone doesn't challenge the contract, that's what they're leaving on the table. for the tier one company or the client.
The two sides, right? So there's the pre-contract award. So
Yeah.
if you're not negotiating that contract, bear in mind they're giving you their worst possible, as you would do. If you're in their position, you give them your worst possible contract. And if you don't negotiate it, you're signing their worst possible contract. They have lawyers internally. They have backup clauses for everything. If you don't even try to negotiate, you're signing their worst contract, which ultimately means if everything goes absolutely perfectly, right, which we all know in construction, of course, it goes perfectly, right? If everything goes absolutely perfectly, you'd be fine. If you don't, you're going to come out behind. That's the contract you're signing up to. If you understand what the change in the contract, essentially the moneymaker clauses, where you can set yourself up, well, if there's changes, I'm going to get paid for them well. If there's delays, I'm going to get paid for them well. So or if there's escalation of rates. And then, so you negotiate better terms and you set yourself up for success. That's kind of like, the guy in volleyball where the guy hits it to one guy and then one guy just tees it up. The smash is the post-contract award phase, which is contract management, how you manage your change orders, your EOTs.
Your execution, your tactical.
And that's where you actually make the money.
Yeah.
And so the story I was going to tell you is about that. It's I won't mention names, but they started in Clonmel in Ireland. Massive company. They sold in 2014 for 2.1 billion. And I consulted for them in 2012, and they had come into Australia and they were cleaning up, and they had a different model, right? And I'll say exactly what it was. They had an army of QSs and contracts people, which Australia at the time didn't have that model at all. Okay, and so they'd come into a job, they would certainly buy the job, right? And they'd essentially bid very low on the project, but they were confident that in the post they would negotiate. We'll give this low price, but it's based on the acceptance of of us changing the contract to have these terms.
Yeah.
Right. Because if there's you're promising me that there'll be no changes, the contract's perfect, right? So let's sign up on that, and then let's give me some beneficial clauses over here. And then in that post-award phase, there was obviously changes off the Richter. They had better rates for their the changes, and they made all their margin and then some in that post-award phase, and they absolutely cleaned up. That's contract management working completely in your favor once you understand how to play the game.
What about when we get into the battle of the forms and, have you seen a situation where there's a standoff? Because, it sounds like that company, if you're Irish, there's only one of two companies that could be anyway. So people will figure that out themselves. But those people, like, they're not the normal corporate people. Knowing that company and knowing those companies, like they drive hard, they work hard. They've got this work ethic that is just through the roof in terms of hours and stuff like that.
Yep.
So, like, that would be a bulldozer coming at you, those type of companies. So you really need not just the paperwork behind you, but you need to sort of have that, it's not aggression, but it's like, here, this is the way it is. And, this is what you've signed up for.
That like 100%. And that brings on a really important topic, Gavin. It is about your relationship with the client, right? So many people have this, I don't want to negotiate my contract because I'll appear too difficult to deal with. They're just going to say, you have to sign it or walk away. That's what so many people think that. And that company we talk about, there's no way they ever did that, right? The actual reality is the biggest and best companies in the field negotiate really hard. They are expecting you to, as I said, they're giving you the worst contract. They're expecting you to go negotiate in a professional way. If you do it in a bad way, obviously, yes, that's going to happen. But if you do it in a very professional way, and you negotiate better terms, there's going to be this level of professionalism and respect that they have for you, right? That's pre-contract. Post-contract, if you're on top of all of your changes, and there's reasons to be like very quick about these. If you're quick and you're like, all right, well, there's the change order, you haven't approved the change order, well, and then straight in on the commercial stuff, again, they don't think you're difficult to deal with. they have respect. These guys are switched on. And I've been on that side and dealing with these companies, and you're just like, they're switched on, they know what they're doing. So even though they might be like, oh, they're a bit like annoying, they have more confidence in you because you know what you're doing. Then some guy who's just doing everything you tell him is not submitting any change orders or EOTs, and I know that he's not going to get paid for them.
Yeah.
Basically,
yeah, or he's going to go bang or bust by month 14. Yeah,
exactly. No cash flow.
Yeah, like oh my god, like the and the other thing about it is there's so much that like for you to find. I just think it's really powerful that you've actually turned a negative position for yourself, and I will have to say to you that there'll be people listening to the podcast going, "That's the person I hate who done my business or brought my business to the ground." Not saying you did personally, but that's that model of, I'm not going to educate this person because if they're stupid enough to sign the contract, they're stupid enough to go into the bin when the money runs out of the business. And for you then to turn that around to a positive, it must be very powerful for you in your day-to-day conversations and in your business mindset, that now it's more of a nearly like a spiritual sort of, journey for you, that you're actually really helping people as opposed to sort of damaging people. How does that sit with you these days?
It's great. I mean, just from a culture point of view in the company, it's like, it's easy to look at the good we're doing. Look at these guys are family people. They work their absolute arses off. Basically, they are these type of people like us, right? And look how much we saved them in this contract. Look how much. Look, we got this change order across the line, and yeah, it's nice. It's nice. I will say though, there's a couple of different things to consider with now. So things have changed a lot since I was on that side. But now even the smaller, like we're not like not these huge construction companies. Let's take a tier down. We're talking same sort
Tier
of
three.
tiers,
Tier three.
but yeah, but the same sort of like same main contractor, general contractor, depending on the country you're in. Technology has come along so far that kind of what I was doing before is now almost brought it. There's like corporate governance around it, right? And so someone submits, I'll give you an example, a variation or a change order, and there'd be a box to tick, right? Has this been submitted within 2 days? No. Reject. End of story. There's no movement. It's over. The system has caught it now. And now it's like, okay, now that what the likes of me and commercial managers across the world have been doing is like, it's just procedurized, which means it's more important than ever that you've got a system that just churns these out, gets them in, and then you can debate about it. But once it's in, it's the most important thing. It has to get in.
Yeah, like I suppose the big question for people that will be listening will be, how do you model a resource system to manage the expectation of what you're trying to deliver or what you guys deliver? So is it a plug and play model with you or a company coming in and go, we're going to like have a pseudo department for you to manage this process? Or do you tell them, by the way, you've got a couple of people in these areas already, let's add them to my people, and then we can have a total solution for what we're trying to achieve here? Because I'm just thinking, do we need to resource up here? That's going to cost me front end to bring people on board.
Yep.
Or do you have a plug and play model?
We'll go into a construction company and I mean, a lot of construction companies won't have a contracts person, or maybe they have a contracts administrator. They just have the PMs doing the contract stuff as a bit of a side hustle. The owner will be the guy reviewing the contracts. So basically we go in, free up all of that time, and we just hook in. As soon as there's a change on site, you let us know this way, a specific way. You let us know. We churn out the document. We give it back to the PM because we used to submit it directly, but we now give it back to the PM and go, you need to submit this by 5 p.m. today or 5 p.m. tomorrow. But we give it back to the PM now because there's still an element of, I won't submit this because whatever, deal he's trying to trade at the time, or, you know, I'll do this one for free for you because of whatever. They still need to retain that element of bartering, right? So long story short, and then we'll manage the process. So if the notice has to go in, we'll do the following up variation, and we let everyone know, okay, this has to be submitted. Here's the final document for you to submit. Just check it over. You're happy, and then send it in. That's the post-award side, and then you just have Zoom access. One click away, you have a focal point who's an expert in disputes or whatever. You click in, talk to them about strategy. That's the post-award. Pre-award is you just send in the contract, and 48 hours later, we've done the full risk review and then already prepared the departures, or the clarifications, whatever you call it in your country, which is basically, no, take this out, put this in, take this out, put this in, and it's just very professional. So you come across looking like you know what you're doing, basically.
I'm interested to see then, and I don't want to know your rates, but is there a value project that doesn't support the economics of bringing you on board?
So how we price is basically, because we can scale up and scale down. Like the benefit of us is, so you got this bell curve of construction, right? So most of the time you have a big project on, and then there's a lull between a big project. Now, if that was the real world and you were hiring people in that lull, you're taking an overhead for those couple of months, while they're not doing any work, and then you get another project. With us, you just switch us off and you turn us back on for the next project. Very, very simple. So you save money there, and then the model is based on how many PMs you have. So it's per PM. So it's like a seat on, you know, on a software thing. So how many PMs you got? You got 4 PMs. All right, this is a price. We'll basically do whatever. We're the PM. That PM's arms and legs for anything contractual. So they just come to us whenever they need us. That's how we price it. So we don't do it via project, because a project might be a monster and have 10 PMs, right? Or you can have 1 PM that is managing 5 different projects. So then that doesn't make sense either. So we do it by PM.
Yeah, I'd say that took a while to work out, did you?
It did, a bit of trial and error. Yeah, it did.
No, seriously, because it was like the obvious thing would be to say, right, if I can skim some money off the top for you, why don't we do a shared value system?
Yeah, I love the idea. I love the idea. I love the idea, right? And if I could do that, I'd love to do it. But the thing, and again, through experience, right? Someone goes, oh, for example, it's always a dispute. Someone asks for this, right? Someone goes, I'm in a dispute at the moment. There's a couple of $100,000 up for grabs here. If you save me X, Y, Z, if you get it for me, we'll give you a thing up the top. And sounds great. But you look at it, and they've done all the wrong stuff. They've done all the wrong stuff. So it's kind of like you're trying to polish this proverbial SH1T, and you're like, no, sorry. The thing about disputes is,
you're not in control of the budget. You're not in control of the budget.
Disputes is a race to see who loses the least amount of money. If you're in a dispute, the ship has sailed. It's all about prior to the dispute. Everything is about, let's not get into a dispute. If you do if you do contract management properly, what happens is you're doing all your stuff, you're getting all your stuff paid for, and it's quiet. There's no big problems. If there's a problem, then you've done something wrong, either on site or contractually, and now we have an issue.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. Like you're not in control of the budgets, you're not in control of the program, you're not in control of the competency of the people that has been selected to manage the expectation of the tender packs and the productivity and the program. So how can you sling your hook on something that might or might not be in terms of profit at the end of the job? But what you can do is you can do all the due diligence front loaded so that people are aware of where they're at. And if they choose to go a certain direction and not take your guidance, well, then that's on them, not on you.
That's it. So our average of what we put forward to a client to get across the line contractually before they've signed the contract, our average is 82% of what we put up forward gets agreed to. So that needs to show people that you can absolutely negotiate. And then you've got yourself a nice contract. That's way lower risk. But then if you don't manage that contract properly, well, you're it's on you, basically.
But
Yeah.
you're building models for people. I don't know if you've looked at that, if you've thought about that, but it sounds very much to me that you're actually building models that can create sustainability for the next contract and the next contract. So, the more they use you, you would imagine that they're picking up education, tools, tips, techniques on how to future-proof their business for the likes of what clients and what client profile do we need to work for. So you might be saying here, all these business that you have here on the utility side of your business, that's all in the bin because your profile customer is actually there to bring you down. And I think that's so powerful. Like, have you had conversations with CEOs in terms of them changing their business direction because of the fact that there was so many red flags being pulled up on their existing capacity of business?
Well, there's a couple of different things you've asked me there. So if you're asking me my passion, right? Passion is business. I love business, right? So I have many of these conversations with the CEOs about business, but I'll come back to that in a second. So different conversations, but contractually, what if you're looking at if you're like, what I try to say about risk, because risk is silent. Because if nothing happens, you just don't hear about it. It's like paying for insurance, right? Nothing happens. It's all quiet. If it's all going well, it's quiet.
Yeah, you're paying for a non-event. You're paying for a
You're paying
non-event.
for it, and that's hard for people to deal with sometimes. But the thing about risk is, if you're not negotiating your contract, you might have been in business 5 years and nothing's happened. But if something does happen, it's going to be a big bang. It's going to set you back 5 years. And there's a very good book called The Road Less Stupid. I can't remember his name. Keith Cunningham. Keith Cunningham, The Road Less Stupid. And he talks about business is not about massive wins. It's about avoiding stupid mistakes. So most people will continue to grow their business. And if you are negotiating the risk out of your contract, something bad happens. You have a little blip and then you continue to grow. You don't set yourself back 5 years because you've put your house on the line or you've ended up signing something stupid, basically. So that's the idea with risk. But with regards to and then that's also longevity as well, because if you think about it, over 10 years, something is going to happen. You're going to get into a corker of a dispute over a 10-year period, without a doubt. So how are you going to come out after that? So basically, you're almost guaranteeing that this thing will happen. It's like insurance, except for it will happen in 5 or 10 years. It's definitely going to happen. So that's from a business point of view, and modeling to reduce your risk as a company, it's vital. But then from a business model point of view, and I've got a book coming out in hopefully next year, and I talk about this a lot, is most construction companies have the worst payment model going in any business. I'll do work for you for free, right? And then at the end of the month, I'll submit my payment application. It might take you 2 weeks to turn around. Then you'll approve it. And then at the best case, you'll pay me 30 days after that. Worst case, it could be 60 or 90 days after that. So you pay me, I'll do work for you for free today, and then you won't pay me for whatever, right? We talk about insurance. Insurance is the best business model, right? Pay me today for something that I may never have to deliver on. That's the best business model. But in construction, the best business models are, I know you work in the utilities space as well, so I'll try and maybe not utilities, but let me try shoehorn an example for you. So GE or Siemens, or they can, or this will even work for the facade of a building. GE, but I'll give you the GE example. GE, they do turbines for big oil and gas plants. So they'll say to you, I'll build you this turbine for whatever it is, 30 million, 20, 30 million. You pay me 20% up front. You pay me milestones as I go through, ahead of schedule. So they're always cash flow positive. They have no cash usage the whole way. And then at the end of the project, we'll sign a 20-year contract where only GE can maintain this for the next 20 years. And so the lifetime value of this, the cash flow of this, is amazing. Now, obviously, it's not easy to do that, but you can certainly start moving in that direction. You can start asking for upfront payments You can trade off a bit of the contract value for an upfront payment to, in this market, secure people, secure materials. If you give me money now, I'll be able to secure this person. We're going to get started. It might be a risk that we mightn't be able to unless you do. Get some money up front. And now you're starting with much better cash flow management through the whole project. Very quick with your change orders. As soon as a change happens, you get the change in. Cash flow is much better. And then financially, as an organization, you're in a much better stead to not have that cash flow tightening where you're scared if you're going to be able to pay your guys and that sort of thing.
With all due respect, I just think that's utopia. And the small to medium enterprise is just getting hammered. And it's
hammered.
Yeah,
hammered.
I'd love
absolutely
to
hammered.
I'd love to see that. I'd love someday in my lifetime, I'd love to see that there's more collaboration and that there isn't this holding cards close to your chest model at the top end, because we're not going to do any more work for anybody. We're just going to manage the people below us and let them do all the work and cash flow the whole project and equipment and everything else.
100%.
It's so damaging and hurtful to the industry in general that this is an accepted model of behavior.
It's shocking, but what you said there about utopia, I have to say, we've lots of our clients in this market are going to their clients saying, we want an upfront payment, 5-10%, small upfront payments, because and it's this market almost every I don't know where all the people are gone, Gavin, but everyone's struggling to get people, right? They're gone somewhere, different planet, everywhere in the world they're gone, right? So everyone's struggling to get people, everyone's struggling to get materials. So it's very easy to sell. We need an upfront payment to secure people and secure materials. That way we can guarantee that we can do this. So people are doing that, and that's going to help the cash flow burden. The second thing is moving away from lowest priced, competitively tendered bids. So if you look at the internet world, everyone knows what a lead magnet is or a loss leader, right? If you think of that first project as a loss leader, right? I'm not saying you lose money on it, but you win that project in a competitive bid. Then during that project, well, this is also in the book, at this first meeting you have with them, you sit down and you say, hey guys, and sorry, provided this is a big client that has multiple projects, you go, hey guys, if we do a good job for you on this project, would you be open to agreeing a master service or a framework agreement with us? They said, yeah, if you do a great job, we're open to it. You do a great job in the 75% of the way through, because you want to do it then, not at the very end. 75% of the way through, you go back to them and say, hey guys, we've done an amazing job for you. Do you think, oh yeah, you've done an amazing job? Do you reckon we can, you said you'd be happy for us to agree a master service agreement. Can we start moving that forward? And you got from 75% of the contract to 100% to chase up and get it signed. Now in your position where you're going to be able to hopefully get repeat work from this good client, and you don't have to rely on the competitive tender every time.
Brilliant. Yeah, I love it. And while you're talking there, I'm thinking to myself, what's your views on a bond before the contract?
Performance bond, insurance bond, for like security?
Security.
Well, security. So bonds and performance bonds, insurance bonds, or bank guarantees, you always pay for them. It's money out of your pocket to get a bond. So you're losing money by paying for that.
You're losing cash flow.
Well, sorry, no, you're not using cash flow. You're losing less cash flow because you're paying for it, but you've not had to put up all of that money. Retention it costs you less, but they withhold 10% of everything. So that is more of a cash flow hit than the other one. Now, so if you're a good company and you can handle cash flow issues like that, which a lot can't, then that's cheaper. You'll actually make more margin on that project because you can do the retention thing. But most companies can't, and they know my cash flow is too low. I have to get a bond, which means they pay for the bond. And these are really expensive. And a lot of times you have to put up personal assets for these bonds or the company up. So there's
PGs,
bonds, and they're not great. If you could do retention, it's cheaper and it's better for you. But there's risks involved with that. But it's definitely better for the margin, but not cash flow.
Yeah, so you're basically saying red flag when you see that type of a structure.
But they're always there these days, Gavin. They're always in. They're like, and a client will. In fairness to the client, they're like, well, what if this guy doesn't perform? How am I going to cover myself? So that's there, but it's the release of the bond that is the problem. You want to get your bond back at the end of the project, and not 2 years down the line, right?
You want to know when you're getting it back.
Exactly. It needs to be very clear that you're getting it back. And then I also think people are worried today that so many builders are going out of business that I mightn't get my bond back.
Yeah, that is happening. I've seen models where they know they're gonna get that bond. So they're getting it up front, they're getting the work done. The guy goes bust and they still have the bond.
Yeah.
Wow. Like, and
then the builders start up a brand new company with a slightly different name.
100%. Yeah, we all know that story, and as well as that, people are in invoice discounting, and they're using these invoice companies to cash flow their business because they've had to put up the bonds and they don't have the capacity. So do you advise your companies in terms of, like we always talk about on the podcast, how many times do you say no is more important than how many times you say yes to a contract? So, it's a very powerful position to get into. If you can get to that stage where your maturity is, I don't have the capacity, I don't have the risk appetite, and I don't have the energy, never mind the money.
Couldn't agree with you more. Couldn't agree with you more, Gavin. If you know a couple of things, if you know this isn't my ideal client, right? This guy wants me to do something. This isn't my ideal work, right? It's not my ideal client. It's not my ideal work. The contract terms are awful, and these guys have a bad reputation. If I check them up on Creditor Watch or Credit Watch or whatever it is, I can see that they have defaults for not paying people. If you have a system within your company where you go bang, 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 okay, it's not even my decision. They just lost all criteria, so they're gone. Then you can take all the emotion out of it.
Yeah, very that alone. I think if people were to take something away from this, conversation, if they're able to get a risk maturity model into their business of that exact scenario, energy, capacity, profile of the customer, like that, you don't need to bring a consultant or Cian Brennan into the equation in order to make up your mind on that. No, I think people have I think people generally have a good sense that even though they've won a contract, in their gut they know there's issues with that contract. And I don't think we listen to our gut enough and go back and go, you know what, why do I need a sleepless night? I could be doing better things with myself and with my family rather than actually driving on just for the sake of scale and the vanity that brings with the whole, ego side of people have ego, and they're going to have ego, and there's no issues with that, but you have to park your ego when it comes to the risk profile of your customer and the toxicity that you're inviting into your business. Because what we see as well is that there's very smart companies that can nearly smell the blood of, a naive company coming to the table that are all bells, all whistles, because they have all this energy behind them. But energy enthusiasm doesn't get you to the finish line.
Absolutely. I heard a really good phrase the other. I've heard it a while ago, but I love it. And this applies for disputes and getting into fights on site about money. Big ego, small bank account.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I know you're pressed for time, so I won't keep you too much. But just to get a sense of yourself, some random questions, just a few curved balls, just to try you out of the seat, if you like. Yeah?
Sure, throw them at me, Gavin.
So, favorite destination and why? King?
Favorite destination.
Favorite holiday destination.
Well, I'm an Irishman living in Australia, so it would be Dingle, County Kerry, Ireland.
Beautiful. So is that your your random one that you pick every now and again, or is what's the significance? Is it just the beauty?
It's just the beauty, and sleigh heads, cycle, drive, walk, the wildness. It's always raining, kind of sideways. The pubs don't close. You know, I've been there. I've brought some Australian people over, and they're like, "What are they doing? They're closing all the doors and bringing candles out. Are they closing?" I'm like, no, this is just getting started. This is
Yeah.
so it's just a great
There's a
place.
session. No, it is
Yeah.
super well said actually. Favorite vehicle and why? Or it doesn't have to be a vehicle, but favorite motor vehicle that you've had, or that you want to have, or that you've driven, or that's.
I'm not a car guy. My wife drives a nice car. I have a banger. I don't go anywhere. I just not. I've never been a car guy. But if I was to buy one, what's the fanciest car I can think of? I'd like an Aston Martin, I think.
An Aston Martin, okay. Is there something interesting about you that nobody would really know, or that not many people would really know? Something of interest to you that could be random, or something that, people in business wouldn't really recognize. Oh, I'd never put that together with Cian.
I won a national championship in Australia as an Irishman, for sprint cycling. So in the velodrome, when they go around really slow
Yes.
for like 2 laps and then go bang for one. So in
Wow.
2015, in the age category, of course. But yeah, that's my random obscure sport.
Wow, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Yeah. Listen, Cian, in terms of people trying to get in touch with you, we had this conversation. You're operating on a global basis. So we already touched off the fact that it doesn't matter what size you are, as long as you're in the construction sector, that's your sweet spot in terms of helping people.
Construction, not resident. Everything except residential.
Everything except residential. So how will people get in touch with you?
Just go to quantumcontracts.com, and then there's a video there, and that kind of explains everything.
Okay, and then LinkedIn as well. Obviously, a very strong presence at Cian Brennan on LinkedIn.
Just you can follow me on LinkedIn, or same on Twitter as well. So pretty active. Or YouTube. There's a YouTube channel called Cian Brennan as well. So, and the podcast Construction Secrets. So if you just depend on what you prefer to read, prefer to watch, prefer to listen, jump on any of those things, and we'll talk contracts and strategies and war stories all day.
Okay, well, listen, thank you very much for coming on the show, Cian. You've been an amazing guest, because I definitely believe that we've now kind of found the person that can actually put the data together on how much is actually on the table that people need to be aware of, in terms of signing up to some of these contracts and thinking that you're lucky because you got the contract. That's not the case. What I got from this was challenge the hell out of every contract that you get, because there's money in that contract that you're going to leave on the table unless you challenge it. So, Cian,
100%.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast, and I wish you the best.
All the best to you too, Gavin. I'll chat to you soon.